Founders, welcome back to the 0 to 5,000 podcast, where we obsess over the convergence of human potential and business results. Today, our hosts Drew McClure and Jordan Mitchell have another insightful conversation for you. So let's jump right in.
All right, founders, welcome back to the podcast. Today, we are joined by Jim Paolino. Jim is the CEO and co-founder of LodeStar Software Solutions, the leading provider of closing cost data to mortgage lenders nationwide. Since being founded in 2013, LodeStar has made the Inc. 5000 list twice. In 2023, LodeStar launched a subsidiary, Settlewise, a national title agency. Jim lives outside Philadelphia with his wife, Sarah, and 2 young daughters. He is passionate about coaching, fellow entrepreneurs, reading, and whiskey. And today, to tell us about his journey, is Jim himself. So Jim, thank you for being here.
Man, that read off through was really impressive. I just sent you that, and it sounds like I'm listening to someone on Audible. You even corrected my typo, too, in real time. So hats off to you. It's the magic behind the microphone.
That's right. You pulled the curtain back a little bit.
I was just so impressed. I had to do it. But thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Well, listen, how did LodeStar get started?
Yeah, so this was kind of a side project that came out of my family business, actually. So I've been really fortunate to grow up around a family of people that had their own businesses one way or another. All 4 of my great-grandfathers actually owned businesses. If you look behind me, I have a bunch of mementos and memorabilia of that.
Wow.
This is my great-grandfather's construction company that eventually went out of business, but that he had founded way back when, Jim Paolino Construction. So it was always something that was kind of in my head. And then back in 2009, the company my dad founded, a title company, they basically needed a calculator. They needed a web app at the time. I was still in grad school studying engineering, knew enough coding to be dangerous, and said, I'll whip it together. Why not? How hard could this be? Right. Prior to that, my only job at the title company was literally moving boxes in a U-Haul truck with a friend during a semester break. So started that. Was a nice side project for me, second income when I was doing other things, working, quote unquote, real jobs. And always had an interest in starting a company, kind of got bored doing what I was doing, found some opportunity coming up in the industry. And they said, hey, how hard could this whole running a business thing be? Let's do it. Right. So took a 6-figure pay cut, signed a lease on an apartment I couldn't afford, and said, I'll be back here in a year. It's fine. I'll be making good money soon enough, right? And then I proceeded to make every small business mistake imaginable. Bringing in partners that didn't ultimately work out, not hiring correctly, not knowing how to sell, not knowing how to price, not knowing how to code. All of these issues that we luckily just had enough time to figure out over time. My co-founder and I slowly we're able to just bootstrap the business, get to the point where we are now, where we've been on the Inc. 5002 of the last 3 years, have about 21 employees at the moment, just opened a second business, found a niche in the market that really made sense for us. And now we have that control and flexibility that I thought I was going to get in about a year, but closer to 11. So
Now, how did we survive some of those small mistakes early to not be terminal to the business?
I think it's just luck and time. Like, I don't know about your journey. I think, looking back, if you were to sit me down when I was 26 and I started the business and told me everything that I was going to go through, that I wouldn't see my old salary for 6 years, I probably wouldn't have done it. But you're just kind of blissfully ignorant at the beginning in a way that kind of protects you, because you get far enough in that the only way out is through. And you just have to keep on pushing through. And we just got far enough in that was what we had to do. We were fortunate enough, between support from friends and family who invested in us, people who were rooting for us, we had enough time to figure it out. We made the right decisions in enough time. I always think of the Vince Lombardi quote, and we never lost a game. We only ran out of time. And we were fortunate enough that we had enough time to slowly figure it out, pivot, and find a niche that worked for us, and stumble across some great people in the meantime.
Yeah. I mentioned this last week on the podcast, but there was a David Meltzer quote that helped me about year 2 in my business, where, same as you, I was like, how did I get here? I thought the projections I had for where I'd be 2 years in are nowhere close to this.
Yeah.
And he said the goal in the early stages of business, first several years, is just to keep the lights on one more day.
Yep.
And it was the same idea. He's like, if you can keep the lights on one more day, you keep giving yourself the opportunity for eventual success.
Yeah.
And just that paradigm shift, I was like, okay, well, I can do that. I can shift my expectations and just see how I can figure out to do this one more day, right?
Yep. And then you finally get to think one more month, one more year, several more years, right? And then it kind of, you know, I don't know if we're allowed to swear or not, but it kind of messes with your head. It's a mind fuck then, in terms of like, oh wait, now I can't, like, we're gonna be here, right? My annual goal isn't to survive. I have to figure out, you know, where we're going to be beyond and have this long-term planning, and that's very different than survival in that year two or wherever it is. So you're you know, hats change a lot, and I don't know what you're in now of your business.
We're about 7.
Okay. Yeah. So your hat's changed plenty of times since then, I'm sure.
Yes. Yes. I mean, we're probably like yours, where year 7 is so much better than it was year 2.
Yeah.
But it's not where probably you hit around year 10, 11. We're still looking forward to some of those.
You know, it's all relative. Every time we set a goal, we hit a goal, we're like, oh, this isn't going to be enough. Like this doesn't make sense. I remember this was probably year 6 of our business, 5 or 6, pretty far in. We said, hey, if we just hit 20 grand a month, we're set, right? And like we get there, we're like, fine, we can pay ourselves barely, but like this isn't a business. We're not there yet. Like we're just paying ourselves for a crappy job at the moment, right?
Yes.
So, and that goal always goes up, which is good. It's a natural part of that business growth.
Yeah. What are some of the things that you learned in those first 5 or 6 years that you would definitely take with you if you had to start another business again?
Well, I've had kind of a unique opportunity to start the second business over the last year. So I can talk about that. So I've gotten to live that a little bit, in going through, opening Settlewise, opening the title company, starting a business now, the second time around with some of those hard-earned lessons. So, with our first business with LodeStar, it took, I think, 8 or 9 months to get our first client. With Settlewise, our first deal came in 5 weeks, right?
Wow.
So significantly faster, right? But I always tell myself now, I was fortunate when I started LodeStar, no wife, no kids, no mortgage, have all of those things now. And I don't think I could have taken the risk that I did back then now. And really in starting the second business, I have every advantage except for one, which is time. I have a lot less time than I did 11 years ago, but you have experience, you have money. Like what I've been learning is you have to go through all the same steps of trying something, screwing up one way or another, learning from it, tweaking and trying again. But the more experience you've had and the more you've done it before, the faster that cycle happens. So it's just as painful, but you can be aware of it and you can be a lot quicker about it. So you're able to kind of, you know, cycle through that flywheel a lot faster than the first time around where you're kind of punching into the air, not saying no to the right people, all of those types of things.
How do you think you landed a client in 5 weeks versus 8 months with this business? I know there's certain things that are not apples to apples, but what do you think one of the difference was?
I knew who I was selling to at the end of the day. I had a universe of 240 LodeStar clients and saying, those are my clients. This is what I'm doing. This is what my business is. This is exactly who I'm going after, right? You have that sense of self a lot better. I had the money to hire someone right away. I had the money to market, the time, well, not that much time, but I had the ability, you had the resources to kind of put everything in place and say, this is how we're doing it. And you could be a little more methodical about going through all of that, where part of the struggle the first time was, I don't even know how to sell. I'm not sure how to set someone up. I don't know how to price this thing. Like there was a lot more to get figured out, where that was pretty straightforward the second time around, from knowing the industry and, you know, just it being a service product it was a little bit easier in that.
Yeah.
Regard. I remember that first client I signed with LodeStar 11 years ago. I was coming back from a family vacation, landed at LaGuardia Airport in New York, saw while I was in baggage claim that we signed the client. It was a weekend. I took the cab right to the office because I had no idea how to set a client up. I'm like, I don't know what the hell I need to do now. So like, let's just go figure this out. So
yes.
There's a little bit of that too.
Yes. Now, besides having the idea for Settlewise, how did you know it was the right time to pull the trigger on starting a second business?
Well, I don't know if it was, right? We'll see.
Yeah,
right.
Fair
but
enough.
it was the right time for us because I think in looking at our business, we kind of saw a cap to what we're doing. We're able to dominate the closing cost market, which isn't huge, right? So in wanting to scale and wanting to drive services through our business and wanting to run more businesses with my co-founder, we wanted to add things, and it was the next step that we thought made sense. It was an idea we'd probably had out for about 5 years, considering one way or another if this was something that could work for us. So it's been floating for a while. And the market, it was actually the worst possible time in many ways to start a title company, which was part of the appeal of it, because it was a very depressed market. The mortgage situation is improving now, but even a year and a half ago, it did not look that way. We're just coming out of a recession in my end of the industry. And the one thing that stuck in my head actually too, and maybe I'm just a contrarian, but I was doing some research and talking to a lot of title agents before I decided to do this. Some of them were our clients, so I was trying to figure out how to kind of thread that needle. And everyone said the same thing: of, you don't want to start this business, you don't want to do that. Just give me the business. We'll open up a joint venture. I'll take care of all that stuff for you. Don't worry about it. Almost eerily so that everyone was answering it that same way. I was like, there's something there. Like there's something that they just like clearly they're so, maybe that's just how I'm built too. I was always the type of kid that if you told me the stove's hot, I'm going to touch it. You just made me want to touch that stove more. Or the saying, if all your friends jumped off a bridge, would you do it? Absolutely. I made sure they were okay first.
Right. To look down.
Yeah. If they're swimming, I'm jumping. Like, obviously. So
how has that helped you over the years in business?
I think it's made me less nervous to take risks, right? I was fortunate that there was a downside, obviously, to leaving a 6-figure job, starting a business and doing that. But I knew I had a job I could go back to, right? Yeah. I could burn a little bit of time. I'd be embarrassed, have to bite my ego, but I'd be able to be back to a job and be okay, right? So I think I've always felt a little more comfortable taking risks. I've always been the type of person that if I look at, they're doing this thing, well, why can't I do that, right? So it definitely makes me confident to do that. It also could lead to, making mistakes or overreaching or being too confident or overly optimistic or things like missing details. So over time, you're just able to kind of build people around you who help with those skills.
Yeah. I heard someone say once, anytime you say yes to a risk, you'll either get paid in experience or money. Yeah. And if you take the first, the second will always come, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like, man, there's not really a loss here, big picture. If I can learn from it, get experience, money will come.
It's just a matter of how expensive those lessons are.
Oh, right? Yeah.
I think that's part of it. Some lessons are more expensive than the others. So
absolutely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How do you balance now running a business? Like you said, so much different when you're single, no mortgage, no family. And now you're making decisions and taking risks, and you've got 2 daughters, you've got a mortgage, you got a wife. How do you kind of stay anchored and still, embracing risk, but not overly worrying and anxious and all that stuff?
I think you always look at your downside, right? You limit your downside. I have a business coach, and that's something I'll talk about more later. But just by reducing that risk and knowing, I always like asking anyone starting a business or myself, what does failure look like right now? Right. Yeah. And being able to know, like, okay, like things, like it gets a point where the business is more boring now than it was 11 years ago in a good way, right? We have recurring revenue. We know what our revenue is going to be like for the most part every month. I've passed off a lot of responsibilities to people. We've built a good team. So you've kind of isolated where you take those risks and how you do it, because it's more limited, because you kind of have your ass covered in certain ways that you can't when you're just starting out.
Yeah. When did you involve a business coach?
My current one for about 2 years or so. I'm in a group called Vistage of CEOs. Yeah. Fantastic. Highly recommend it. It was probably about 5 or 6 years ago that I started looking for a network of peers and started finding them. I think that was one of your questions later, advice to other business people. And that was my answer to preview it. Yeah. Get a peer network, right? Get people going through it, because it's isolating, it's difficult, it's challenging. One of the things I'm passionate about is coaching entrepreneurs. I have folks that I work with who've all different stages of starting businesses. I just love it. I love working with them, trying to help them learn from the lessons I had, and just keeping your perspective different. And as a coach, like, you learn so much just by coaching too.
Yes.
So you get to see a lot of businesses, learn about a lot of new industries. So that's how I like being a coach, but also having peers, it just gets you out of your own head. Like, often you can't necessarily talk about this stuff to your spouse. You can't really talk about it with other folks at the company. So you need that outlet.
Yeah.
And the thing I like about my business group is, out of, 12 people, I think we're the third or fourth smallest company. And it kind of gets to my sense of, I'm always the person, if you put me in the room with people doing bigger things or anything like that, I'll be like, I can do that. So it gives me that one day a month, which is, I think, for me, really important.
So one day a month, how many people are in your group meet?
I think about 12.
Virtual, in person?
No, it's in person in the Philly area.
Cool.
Yeah. And then everyone, there's speakers. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, speakers will come in. And then the thing that is find helpful is people just present their business issues to everyone and say, this is what I'm struggling with. And then people ask questions and try to give advice and help. And you see, regardless of the size of the company, about 80% of the problems revolve around the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Dealing with people in one way or another. So you're able to see that common thread. It gets you out of your own head too, of like, what about my issues? What about my problems? Trying to help someone. And also, when you're that person presenting an issue, it's challenging. You're getting a level of accountability that it can be pretty easy to avoid when you're running your own business.
Yeah.
And I would say, actually, coming off of our Inc. 5000, especially our first win, we get a little bit of high on our own supply. We're very a lot of what we do is based off interest rates and the mortgage industry doing better or worse, right? And coming off of 2020, when interest rates were super low, 2021, that lifted up our business a lot. And I didn't realize at the time that how much of our growth was due to that until it kind of got taken out from under our legs. So being just kind of realizing that, like, what's responsible for your success. Like, I was going through this, doubling year over year, and was like, we're great at business. This is going to continue indefinitely. And then you kind of get humbled in many ways. So it's been helpful to just get better at realizing and looking at your numbers, looking at what's going on, and say, why is this happening? Like, what is related to our success, how we can tie it together. I could say that we're probably actually growing more than we have over past years, but because the industry is hurting our volume, it gets a little shielded. So you don't win awards when that happens, but it's actually a lot more important for your business long-term to be able to survive in those years and grow 7%, 10% when everyone else in the industry is laying people off.
Yes.
Like, you don't get awards for that, but you get to keep the lights on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I've got a couple questions. Well,
yeah.
I'll remember the next one. So before that one passes me by, what are some of the things you guys have done probably over the last couple years that set you up to still be growing at all in the industry as it's struggling?
That's a good question. So I think we're just fortunate that we have a revenue model that makes sense, our recurring revenue model, that as a software company, software as a service, we're able to have some guaranteed minimums, and it shields us in a way that other companies aren't, right? So that was kind of fortunate there. We have a very small market share, so we were continuing to add clients during that time. There were years, I look at our numbers now in a different way than I did before, where I close a month, I look a year ago, and I say, out of our clients a year ago, how many are still here, and what is that revenue? Is that higher? Is that lower? And that was 20% down because of industry volume.
Yeah.
I say, okay, what clients a year ago did we lose? That's your churn. That was down 50%, right? So you're down 35% before looking at anything else, right? And then you look, hey, how many new clients did we add? That number was 33%, right? So we shrank -2%, right?
Yeah.
Keeping our head above water just barely, right? So being able to add new clients made up for that as times were tough, and being able to recognize that and stay committed to sales. I think all too often people aren't doing well. The first thing they cut is their marketing budget, or cut salespeople or things like that. And there's kind of times you kind of have to sell yourself out of a problem in some ways.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Revenue can solve a lot of problems, right?
Cash can solve a lot of problems. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
More specifically, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So back to the peer-to-peer, the question I had, So again, being a coach, I've been in many environments myself for my own business, but also helping other businesses where when it's time to present the problem to the group, probably earlier on when people don't know each other as well and that kind of thing, you'll get questions that are certainly like, yes, this is a problem, but it's still kind of a saving face question. Like you're not really opening up and asking the real pain point. And then someone in the group will, and it changes everything.
Yeah.
You know, it's like someone gets vulnerable and they're like, guys, I really need help. I suck at this. And everyone, it's like a breath of fresh air. And we're like, oh, we're really talking. Have you noticed that dynamic before? Yeah.
And I think one thing, I've been in a couple of different CEO groups. I think having a moderator and having like someone who runs the group, and that happens to be my business coach, helps, opposed to a group that's self-managed. When a group's self-managed, you don't really have that as much as when a person's there and kind of knows that and can dive down to that. I'm always surprised when someone is presenting an issue, the question they're asking isn't the question they end with after that hour of talking it through. They aren't asking the right question, and the group is able to kind of help them get to that point. Yeah. Like I've been through it a couple of times. We had someone come up and say, oh, I need to hire a new CEO. So we went through it, and no, he didn't. He needed a operations manager or something like that. And that actually, I had that same conversation with my business coach and co-founder about a year ago too, and it led us to a great role that we have that is not a COO. So that's just an example of making sure you're asking the right question, to your point.
Yeah.
And I think you need kind of that vulnerability. I think you need that moderator, I think, helps a lot because they're able to kind of push you along because they have that experience with you as well as knowing the rest of the group.
Yeah, it makes me think of a big lesson I had early in business. I realized pretty quickly, me and my co-founder did not know how to sell. We were great coaches, but we were terrible salespeople. Yeah. And so we hired a sales coach, and I don't know if you've ever done this or not, but he made us record our calls and listen to them back. And it was just so embarrassing listening to yourself back. Hey, Jim, how are you, man? How's the weather? What's going on, right? And so one of the times he was just kind of teaching us, he goes, hey, you're so focused on sales right now that you've actually stopped being a good coach. And I was like, what do you mean? And he goes, when they present, because we'd ask them like, hey, what's the pain or the problem you're trying to solve? They might say something like, we need a new CEO. And he goes, you're just agreeing with them. You're taking what they're saying is the problem and agreeing it's the problem. And then from there, trying to develop the solution. And he goes, be a coach in that moment.
Them. Yeah.
Like ask questions.
Like
until, and he's like, many times we found, just like you, we'd be at the end of that discovery call. Yeah. And where we started wasn't where we ended. And he's like, that's actually what is going to give them the confidence.
And you would probably close a lot better that way too.
Way better.
Because like you're able to like, people can see what you're going to do with them.
100%. But when I was insecure, because I'm not used to being in a sales conversation, I was taking whatever data they were giving me like it was 100% accurate and then going, okay, so we'll put this together for you. We'll help this.
Right.
And so anyways, that just reminded me of that lesson.
Yeah.
For you, what helps you get the most out of, because I'm sure there's, again, our audience is largely business owners. Many of them might be looking at or in a peer-to-peer group like Vistage. Do you do anything to help get the most out of it, to make sure you're showing up and getting the most value out of the opportunity you signed up for?
Yeah, I think it's really important to, whatever the session is, clear your day, right? I think the fact that it's a full day in person a month, blocked off on my calendar. Sure, if you have to take a call, things can happen, but like the more present you can be, the better team member you are, the better group member you are for other people. So just trying to focus on that is really important.
Yep.
And I think thinking about the problems you're coming with at the end of the day, right? Even from thinking like, hey, I'm going to see this person. This is what I want to ask him about, or something like that. Like just preparing mentally of like, this is what I want to get out of this particular meeting too, and just being really present in the moment, because it's so tough when, you know, you have your phone, everyone's office is attached to their hip, right? Especially as a business owner. Yeah. Where everyone can get a hold of you. One of the things that I did, my second daughter was just born in March.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Leading up to that, I took email off my phone, and I had someone in my email kind of in preparation for me being out. And for the most part, I have not added my email back to my phone since then. And it's been phenomenal. It's been wonderful. I don't have someone in my email anymore. I've been kind of blocking where I check it. I might get back to that at some point, but my rationale is that when you're looking at email on your phone, you're never in a good position to actually respond to it. So it's only serving as a distraction.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to go and answer emails, I'm going to be at my computer doing that, right? I'm going to be in a better position to do that. Yeah, I have Slack on my phone. Someone internally can get a hold of me. Someone can call me. There's other ways of people getting a hold of me, but just getting that external email off your phone makes a big sense. I'll add it back when I'm traveling. It's kind of a joke. It takes me 30 seconds to get it back on my phone, but as like a, practice and just way of giving myself a little bit of sanity, I just keep it off.
Yeah. That's perfect. Because I would love to know along the same lines. Mm-hmm. Are there any habits? Are there any routines? Are there any things that really help you, whether it be enjoy your life more or be more effective? What are you playing with right now?
I think it's important to I don't want to say work less, but have that separation. It was tough, obviously, when a lot of people starting out work from home or the type of things. I love the ride home from the office because it disconnects. One thing I try to do, I always call it exiting my day, where I say, okay, I'm done working. Let me wrap up anything I need here. Set my to-do list for the next day, and I'm done. And put everything down and then exit, right? And it's tough to do that. The days that I don't do that, the days I get off a call, turn it off, and then I'm in the car going to pick up my daughters or cook dinner or do whatever, I don't feel as relaxed. I don't feel like I've stopped working, right? So you kind of need that set end of okay, I'm done. Even if that's at home, you put in your desk chair, you close the door to the room where you're working or something like that, I think is a really powerful ritual of actually ending when you're working.
Yes. I love that you said that. That was advice that I don't get to apply right now as easily because I work from home. So I stepped out of this door and I'm back with my kids. Yep. But my mentor back a few years ago, he said, he worked in an era where you were wearing suits and ties, right? Yeah. And his ritual was when he got in the driveway, before the kids saw him out the window, all that stuff, he's like, I'd put my car in park. I would look at my phone and ask, do I have any last things to do? Yeah. Calls, emails, texts. Yep. As soon as that was done, he said he would look in the mirror and his ritual was taking his tie off. That some part of I'm getting out of this uniform, I'm taking this off. And then it was a signal to his brain to dad mode, husband mode, here we go. And that helped him really, at first it wasn't much, but over the years, it really was a powerful shift of tidying up, finishing up what needs to be done today, and then giving yourself that gift of kind of shifting to the next thing. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, exactly. Because I think I've done it if you're trying to relax while you're working, you're not working as hard. If you're trying to work while you relax, you're not really relaxing as much, right? And you're not really doing either well. So I think that is a line that has been blurred for me in the past where it's no, if you're going to work. If you're going to relax. And it's tough. I'm definitely not one of it. Even if I have that time at home, come 4:00, I'm leaving the office, doing pickup, doing all the kid stuff. Maybe I'll log back on around 8 to look. I'm still working at 8 p.m. a little bit in front of the TV, watching a ball game or whatever. But I'm choosing to do that. And it's also helping me kind of organize the rest of my day. And I'm still kind of blocking off that time between then to be present with my family or have a life or do whatever else. So.
Yeah. I don't know enough about this story I'm about to mention, but I just thought it was interesting from the outside. But are you familiar with the Starbucks CEO getting let go a few months ago?
I saw that it happened. I didn't know all the details.
I don't know a ton of the details, but what the pundits were saying was that he had given an interview, and I don't know if it was CNN or Forbes, or he was giving some interview, and he was saying what you're saying right now, which was basically after 7:00, I try to communicate to the team, don't reach out to me unless it's a real emergency.
Yeah.
And people were saying that's why he got fired. And then I'm hearing even these pundits, one was these podcasts I really like to listen to, these 4 billionaires who've all been successful tech whatever. They were ripping on him too, going, you can't have that attitude. I'm like, are we still thinking this way? It's surprising to me.
It's different what you telegraph to shareholders, right? And it's at a different level at that. But yeah, and I'm sure there's people who don't feel that way. I don't think Elon Musk is unplugging at 7 p.m. right? And he's not my role model. So
exactly.
Right. It's different, right? And I think that's one of the things you see with startup culture a lot of you're expecting that. And I think at the beginning, it's tough, right? I was working a lot differently in year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 than I am now. It's a lot different then. But even if you're at that part where it's a total grind, it's tough to then expect your team to be doing that as well if they don't have the same upside that you do.
Yeah.
And like, that's not necessarily what a successful business looks like.
Yeah.
Right. And I think a lot of what I optimize for is flexibility in my life, right? Of being able to do all of those things. So that's kind of the balance that works for me. Everyone's different. Like,
absolutely.
If you want to be a billionaire, you might have to work a little bit differently. Not in the cards for me. That's okay.
Yeah. I like that. And that's why I said my caveat was I don't really know the story. Who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe Starbucks was really not doing well, and that's the wrong time to be saying you're protecting your work-life balance. Could have been something like that, which is reasonable.
Yeah.
It was just the discourse. It was the discourse I was hearing that was like, this feels like we're going backwards a little bit in how we're talking about performance. I was having, I was playing golf with a friend I hadn't seen in a while, and he started a successful software company, got bought by Rocket, stayed on. So he's inside of Rocket Mortgage. Yeah. And he was talking about the same thing. And he goes, I tried to tell my team, I want you consistently at around a 6 or 7 in terms of effort. And he said, and so that when we really need it, I can say, hey, for the next 3 weeks, we need you at a 10. You'll actually give me a 10. Right. And he goes, most people will say, I always need you at a 10. And then he's like, you can't keep up a 10. And so he's like, we've actually gotten results that way. Like, I'm not just, I've been doing it the last 3 years. I tell people, myself, I want you at a good 6 or a 7 in intensity. And then we'll shift up when we really need to for a 10, and then we'll come back down to a 6. And I was like, man, that's really cool that not just in theory, but in practice that has worked for them.
Yeah, I mean, you probably have people who stay a lot longer because of that too.
Yes.
Right, like I love when on Slack I see people with a little icon walking their dog, noon to 1 every day, or at kids' gymnastics or dance class or something like that. Like, you want those things.
Yes.
People have lives. You want them to understand. I posted a while ago a series of things called How Not to Manage Like an Asshole. And being a manager, like, people leave companies because of managers, not because of companies, right? Like, and being a good manager, in my opinion, is just being a person who gives a crap and cares, right? Like, you don't need any sort of pedigree or education or anything to be a good manager. Yeah. You just have to treat the people who you work with as actual people. And that's pretty much it. So
yeah. I had a couple of guys that came to work for me, and they came from very Big Five tax, Deloitte type, places, and accounting firms, not tax, accounting firms. And they would always ask me questions like, hey, I got a dentist thing on Thursday. I was like, of course you can go. Or, hey, I was looking to do this. And I could tell their mind was having a hard time wrapping around how I thought about their work versus what they came from. And I said, listen, I'm only going to question your inputs if your outputs are struggling. Right. I was like, all I care about is I want to trust you. If the output that I've asked you to do is good and you got your work done early or you move things around, go for it, dude. You don't need to check in with it. But it was a whole new way of thinking about it. I was like, now, if you keep missing tasks and things are late or subpar, then I might look and say, are you giving enough time, enough effort? Are you scheduling your time well? But they were not that. They were above and beyond people. They were waiting for somebody to slap them on the back of the wrist for taking any personal time or whatever. It's
crazy the workplace trauma that people bring with them. I've noticed that when I've put in employees that are doing great and they know it, and I put a random calendar invite on their calendar just because I want to talk about some odd thing. They go, am I getting fired? Right. I'm like, no, I'm not. Right. One, I wouldn't do that if you were, but yes. I make a point now, if I put something on someone's calendar, I say what it is. I put more detail on it. Our sales director, I joke. I say not really important thing that we're going to talk about or something like that, of all the things going on. Right. Yes. No stress meeting I'll put on there.
Yes. God, one of our clients, this is so funny. We've been working with them for over 1.5 years, and she's great, but she scared the crap out of me about 6 months ago because I got a random email that said, our company's name is People Profit, and her company, and whatever the subject line was, totally made it sound like they were firing us. Yeah. And it was 5 days from when I got the email was when we were having the meeting. And so for me and my partner for 5 days, we're like, what did we do? Yeah. We were like, what the crap? Yeah. We get there and it was all gravy. It was we're so excited about continuing and this, that, and the other. And I told her, I said, you need to work on your subject line. And she was like, what do you mean? I was like, do you send subject lines that to your people? And her CEO, so she's like the COO, the CEO started dying laughing. He goes, yes, you scare people all the time because you don't understand how it sounds when you're setting. And she was like, oh, I think I just think efficiently like this. And I was like, yeah, man. So we laughed. It was like a big learning for her. Just like for you, it was like, I need to use language a little better because I'm freaking people out about these meetings I'm setting up.
Yeah.
So I like that you actually put the purpose of it in there or some context or something.
Or I'll Slack them, like something like that. Just to know. But to your point earlier about, the hustle culture, Steve Jobs, when he fired people, would put a 9 a.m. meeting on your appointment and say, Drew's getting fired. That's what he would do. Like, he was a mogul, he was a visionary, but like he was an asshole. So, it's...
Oh, that's hilarious. It does make me think about, it sounds like you're doing this, but the easiest thing in the world as a manager or a boss is to only really have intentional conversations when they're screwing up.
Yeah.
And so then that is the natural, it's like, my dad's awesome. He and I's relationship has improved a lot, but I remember up until probably college, maybe even after college, if I got a text or a call from him, I knew I did something wrong. So I would get instant anxiety if I saw a text. His text would always say this, call me. That's all it would say. Yeah. I'd get a text, call me. And I'd go, God, what did I do? What did I forget? What did I get in trouble for? And it was because he had set that precedent of I only really reach out when it's corrective in nature, right? And so I was working with this CEO that I was like, do you think that's probably true for yours? And he's like, yeah, I think it probably is. I said, well, let's just experiment. Yeah. Like, let's experiment with you calling people intentionally to your office for a conversation for the opposite reasons. Because you notice
it's so weird it had.
He said it was about 3 months of it being very awkward for people, but it was something he committed to. And I was like, we got to be equally good at noticing when people are doing well, or we just wanted to connect and find out how things going. Yeah. And he just noticed a more relaxed, not like a relaxed, like people didn't focus, but there was a more relaxed nature around each other and around him that I think we could all benefit from experimenting with, right?
Yeah.
Have you seen any of that in your culture? Like, we don't want to just call out the problems, but we also want to recognize and reward like the effort and the good things.
Yeah, it's something I try to be intentional with, especially when you're giving praise. You need to be very specific, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not just you did a good job. It's good job at this. Or I think it also depends on the person, right? Like there's certain people who want to be called out in a group. There's certain people where don't do that ever, please. Right? Yeah, do not want to be called out. Like that is not
private praise, please.
It's there's the love languages, right? And then there's the like languages appreciation in the workplace, which are pretty similar, right? I think there's 4 of them of the ways people want to show appreciation.
Huh, I've not heard of that.
Right? So there's words of encouragement, which is the biggest one for many people. Drew, you did a great job with that. Really appreciated it. Right.
Yep.
Time of like, if you do a good job with something, you don't want me to say you did a good job. You want a meeting, you want lunch, you want like some like actual time together.
Yeah.
Salespeople are really big on that. Help. You don't want to give me lip service. You want me to help you with whatever issue's going on. Right. That's my biggest one. And then gifts are the 4th of like, whether it be an Amazon card or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Right. And the same, there's the love languages, which are the same 4, and then they add touch. And obviously that's taken out.
Can't do that.
Yeah. Pat on the back, but no. But it's important. So it may seem subtle, but it can have really impacts. Like if generally the like language of appreciation that you have is what you want to receive, right? The one that's most important to you. So if you really value help, right? And I really value words of encouragement. You have a deadline. I come in and be like, Drew, you got this. You make this every time. I have all the confidence in the world. You got it. I'll see you later. Yeah. Right? I just gave you encouragement. I think that's great. You want help. You're going to see that and be like, what an ass.
Yeah.
Like, help me do this. Like, I don't care about words of encouragement. I need your help right now. So like you can speak different languages. It's great in relationships. It's a great concept for the workplace. There's tests, low quizzes that you can take so you can see what languages your team cares about. So it's something that is super helpful.
Oh, that's awesome. Have y'all taken one of those tests?
Our directors are kind of core leadership group.
Cool.
Those. Yeah.
Cool.
And I think I then had the team This was a year or two ago now that we did this concept, but then I had them go and do that with their teams as well.
I need to look into that. That's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
It makes a ton of sense. I mean, again, if that's how it works, the 5 love languages works really well as a tool for relationships.
Yeah.
I got to imagine very similar works in the workplace.
Yeah. And there are a lot of similar things, right? It's just like understanding what a person values, like understanding how people want to receive feedback as another example for me of what's super important of like, do you want a compliment sandwich? Can I give you written feedback? Do we have to talk through things? That type of thing. It makes it easier to have those conversations. And I really, like you were saying, just normalize kind of that interaction.
Yeah.
So it makes it easier to then talk about a real issue.
Yeah. The more normal feedback in general is, because feedback isn't positive or negative. Sometimes the feedback is fun to hear. Sometimes the feedback isn't. The more normal it is, the less defensive we're going to be. And like, if you're a company that's like, we only give feedback once a year.
Yeah.
We have this super intense once a year meeting about you, about your job. It's always going to be high anxiety.
Yeah.
It's always going to be full of defensiveness because you're not sure if my job's on the line. But when it's formal and informal throughout the year, there's some formal moments, there's some informal moments. Great job on that. Man, that was awesome. Or, hey, seems like we were a little behind on that. Let's try to get better at this. It's just more natural and it's more productive, right?
One thing that I found is helpful, especially with folks when you need to like feel weird butting in the moment, is calling it a teachable moment, like kind of labeling it of like teachable moment. Let me just say this, like once we had a salesperson who talked about our billing and instead of saying that we bill in arrears, she told them that we bill in the rear. So I laughed and I was like, listen, this is how you're supposed to say.
That's like a Tommy Boy moment.
It's like I need to correct you right now. Yeah, like we we want it to be both, but we bill in arrears. So
people might be confused if you keep saying this.
I can't have that waiting for a performance review. We need to nip this one in the bud, right?
That's awesome. That's awesome. So you guys are about 21 people now.
Yep.
What have you noticed the difference is at that number versus when you're lean and mean at 5 to 8 people?
I'm doing less. I don't want to say doing less, but doing less of the day-to-day, right? It's weird what you step out of not doing client updates or not selling individual clients. So a lot of more things are happening without me touching.
Right.
We just hired the first person that neither myself or our co-founder spoke with in an interview, which felt really weird for me. Yeah, which I generally dislike. Actually, I like really talking to a lot of people we're hiring, but I trust you need that to grow, right? I trust the team. Like we put a good process in place. So you just see a lot, like you hit those milestones of those things are happening kind of without you.
Yeah. Do you think, are you projecting more team needed in the next year, or does it feel like this is the right team for the season we're in terms of quantity of people?
It'll depend, especially on our new business. That can be more labor intensive, being a service business. So we have, we'll probably have a position open indefinitely, one or the other, for a little while right now. I think I've already slowly identified what I think I want our next hires to be. And then with the business now, having scaled one business before, I think I'm a little more comfortable hiring early. With that business, we're already hiring our second person right now. So I'm a little more comfortable doing that because I know you kind of need to hire ahead of the need. And I'm also not broke like I was 11 years ago doing it. You have a business that's bankrolling the other business, so it's easier to invest and do all of that. So short answer, yes, I want to keep hiring. I want to keep growing as it makes sense, right? Yeah.
With Settlewise, as an example, and it might be totally dependent on the business, but I'm always curious if people's first couple hires are more specialists or more generalists.
Our first hire was very much an operations person, right? And it was kind of me filling a gap where I know I'm going to step in on this and I'm going to be doing a lot more individual sales than I want to be long term. I need to do this right now. One of my favorite business books is Great CEOs Are Lazy. Highly recommend it. Fantastic book. And it talks about a CEO's biggest challenge is finding the biggest problem, fixing it, and moving on to the next one, right? And you can wear one of 5 hats to do that, one the player hat. as one of them, of let me step in, let me be a player right now, figure out what this entails so I can then pass it off. So I'm that sales player, not that operations player. So I have someone that we can build an operations team around. So that was what I picked. And then as soon as she came in, she said, the next hire, we need the specialist, right? And that's who we're hiring right now.
Cool. I love it.
Yeah.
All right. Final question, then I'll let you go.
Sure.
What's got you most excited about the future right now?
The industry we're in is kind of about to pop right now. We're coming out of a crappy 2 years. Things are turning around. So, we've been able to grow a lot, swimming upstream. We're about to have, the water at our back, the current at our back.
Cool.
So I'm very excited to see kind of what the result of that is. In the same way, my time was limited this year. Now I'm kind of back full time as well. So there's a lot of fun, exciting things going on, and I can kind of see what it all comes and put it together. One thing I'm thinking a lot about is, like we said in the beginning of the call, like looking day-to-day survival, week-to-week survival. I'm finally trying to get it in my head of what's a 10-year plan? And I don't have a good vision of that, right? So trying to figure out what that actually looks like is, both overwhelming and fun at the same time. So those are the things that are keeping me excited at the moment.
Heck yeah. Well, Jim, this has been a pleasure. I know you also mentioned that you have your own podcast, and I'd love to plug that for you. What's the name of your podcast? Lending
Leaders Podcast. We're on Spotify. We're on YouTube. Wherever you get your podcasts. We just started our 5th season. So very much about the world of lending and mortgages and real estate. So if that's of interest to you, tune on in.
Cool. Jim, thank you for being here, man.
Thanks,
you have been a
Appreciate
pleasure
it.
and shared so much wisdom with us.
See you.
Founders, thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast and hop into our monthly founder email so we can ensure you stay on the edge of peak performance and massive business results.